The movie starts where a couple, Patrick and Adeline, enjoy a quiet moment together. Unbeknownst to them, a shadowy figure lurks in the distance. Patrick surprises Adeline by slipping a ring into her strawberry and proposing. Overjoyed, she excitedly says yes. Just then, Patrick receives a call from his photographer, who complains that sun flares ruined the shot and asks him to redo the proposal. Annoyed, Patrick snaps at him, telling him to get it right this time. As the call ends, Patrick proposes to Adeline once again, and she accepts. He immediately calls the photographer to check if the photos turned out fine. Before he can react, Adeline snatches his phone to speak, but in that very moment, an arrow pierces through Patrick's forehead, killing him instantly. Upon witnessing this, Adeline screams in terror and bolts, the killer hot on her heels. She manages to hide in a bush, but then her boyfriend's phone starts ringing. The killer is calling her. The sound gives away her location, and before she can react, an arrow strikes her ankle. Injured and limping, Adeline struggles forward until she reaches a winery. There, she spots a security guard and pleads desperately for help. Before the guard can act, the killer emerges and hurls a knife marked with a heart logo, killing him instantly. A horrified Adeline flees once more, eventually hiding inside a massive metal tank. Silence follows. She waits, breathless, then cautiously peeks outside. Suddenly, the killer lunges, grabbing her neck. In a desperate move, Adeline slams the tank door shut, forcing him to let go. But her victory is short-lived. The killer activates the compression mechanism. The tank closes in, crushing Adeline Until. In a gruesome finale, her head explodes. The killer finally steps into view, his mask adorned with little heart-shaped eyes. In the next scene, news channels buzz with reports of a serial killer on the loose, dubbing him the Heart Eyes Killer. Reports reveal that Heart Eyes specifically targets loving couples, but won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets in his way. Authorities urge everyone to stay home and remain extra cautious, especially since today is Valentine's Day. Next, we meet Ally, who is at a coffee shop with her best friend, Monica. She's stressed because her boss has scheduled an emergency meeting where she must present her ad campaign. While grabbing coffee, Ally encounters a charming guy, and they blush upon realizing they ordered the same drink. As they chat, Ally accidentally drops the sugar, and in a clumsy moment, she bumps into him, causing a bloody nose. Mortified, she quickly flees the scene. The scene shifts to the meeting, where Ally's boss plays her Valentine's Day campaign. However, the ad is shockingly violent, triggering outrage and negative backlash online. The timing is disastrous, given the Heart Eyes Killer's ongoing murder spree. Furious, the boss brings in a new employee, Jay Simmons, to fix the mess. To Ally's surprise, Jay is the same man she met earlier at the coffee shop. Jay is well respected in his field and reassures everyone that they will work together to fix the situation. Meanwhile, at the winery, Detectives Zeke and Janine arrive to investigate the brutal murders of Patrick and Adeline. As they inspect the crime scene, they discover a wedding ring engraved with the initials JS, which does not match either of the victims. They also uncover the photographer's final shot, capturing the masked killer mid-attack. Later, Ally is in her office bathroom, scrolling through negative comments on her Instagram about her controversial ad. Suddenly, Jay appears outside the stall, saying he needs to talk to her. Reluctantly, Ally steps out, and Jay informs her that he has booked a dinner reservation for tonight to discuss the campaign. She tries to decline, pointing out that it's Valentine's Day and suggesting they meet tomorrow instead. However, Jay insists, explaining that he has a morning flight to attend his best friend's wedding, so it has to be tonight. That evening, Ally dresses elegantly and arrives at the restaurant before Jay. When he finally shows up, looking sharp and charming, Ally is impressed. As they chat, Jay suddenly asks if her heart was recently broken, hinting that her pain is reflected in her work. This offends Ally, and she snaps at him, telling him to mind his own business. When that doesn't end the conversation, she mockingly questions why he's still single if he's so romantic. Frustrated by her harsh words, Jay abruptly ends the dinner and walks out of the restaurant. Feeling guilty, Ally immediately runs after Jay and apologizes. She explains that she had a rough day and suddenly, in the heat of the moment, leans in and kisses him. But just as things are getting intense, they are interrupted by a man, Ally's ex-boyfriend. He has arrived with his new girlfriend to celebrate Valentine's dinner. In a spur-of-the-moment decision, Ally introduces Jay as her new boyfriend, and to her relief, he plays along. Her ex looks stunned, and while trying to one-up her, he casually reveals that he and his girlfriend were originally supposed to double date with another couple, the same couple who were murdered at the winery. Soon after, Ally and Jay get into a taxi together, unknowingly being watched by someone wearing a heart-eyed mask. When they arrive at Ally's building, she apologizes again for the awkward evening before stepping out. However, as she reaches her doorstep, she rummages through her bag and realizes she has lost her keys. Jay notices her struggling, so he tells the driver to keep the meter running and rushes to help her. Without hesitation, he breaks her window, successfully getting her inside, but ends up cutting himself in the process. Grateful, Ally grabs a first aid kit and carefully treats his wound. As she bandages him up, her eyes suddenly land on a personal item on the bed, something she doesn't want Jay to see. Trying not to raise suspicion, she quickly snatches it and discreetly tucks it into the closet. Suddenly, the Heart Eyes killer appears and immediately attacks. A fierce fight ensues between the two, with the killer quickly cornering Jay against the wall. Just as the situation looks hopeless, Ally grabs a lamp and strikes the killer, temporarily disorienting him. Seizing the moment, the two rush out of the apartment, securing the door with a belt to buy some time. They run towards the taxi, but the killer is relentless. He shoots the driver in the head, leaving them without an escape. In a desperate attempt to save themselves, Ally pleads with the killer, trying to convince him that they're not a couple and are not the ones he's after. Meanwhile, Jay tries to call 911, but before he can, the killer shoots his cell phone with an arrow. Now on foot, the two run into an abandoned botanical garden, thinking they've escaped, but the killer quickly catches up. He attacks Ally, and as Jay tries to intervene, the killer overpowers him, knocking him unconscious. Seeing her chance, Ally flees, but the killer abandons Jay and pursues her relentlessly. Eventually, Ally makes her way to an amusement park, where she hides inside a carousel. Suddenly, the killer starts the ride, cranking up the speed to make it impossible for Ally to keep her balance. She falls off but quickly gets back on her feet. The killer approaches, brandishing a machete, but Ally kicks him with all her strength, knocking him off the carousel. She makes a run for it, but just as the killer is about to strike, several police cars arrive, causing the Heart Eyes killer to mysteriously vanish. Breathing heavily, Ally rushes to an officer, frantically telling him everything that happened, all while growing increasingly concerned about Jay. However, the officer's radio suddenly crackles with the news: the murderer has been caught. Just as Ally starts to relax, Detective Zeke and Janine approach her, asking her to explain the events. But as Ally begins her account, her eyes fall upon Jay, who has been arrested, and the shock on her face is palpable. Ally urgently informs the officers that Jay is not Heart Eyes, but Detective Zeke insists that he's a suspect, especially since they found him wearing a mask and carrying a crossbow. To make matters even worse, Detective Janine adds that they believe Jay wasn't acting alone, which now also makes Ally a potential suspect. At the police station, Zeke confronts Jay with the wedding ring they found at the vineyard, which has the initials JS engraved on it, suspiciously matching Jay Simmons. Jay denies any involvement, but his reaction only makes Zeke more aggressive. Janine steps in and tells Zeke to leave, so she can continue the interrogation on her own. Janine starts flirting with Jay, asking about his relationship with Ally, since he seems to care deeply about her. Meanwhile, Ally is at the station, insisting to an officer that they've caught the wrong person. She asks for updates repeatedly, causing the officer to get annoyed and head into the interrogation room. Just then, David, an IT technician who is there to repair a computer, approaches Ally. He tells her that she seems familiar and asks if they matched on Bumble, but Ally denies it. He seems interested in her and asks her out, but she firmly refuses. Afterward, Janine arrives with another officer, and they meet Ally in the hallway. Janine begins questioning Ally, asking if she's interested in Jay, given that he's attractive and successful. Suddenly, the lights go out, plunging the station into darkness. Janine decides to investigate, while the other officer goes to the supply room to find a flashlight. But before she can react, the officer is pierced from behind by Heart Eyes, who uses a flagpole as a weapon. Ally watches in horror as the officer falls to the ground. Ally rushes down the hallway and tells Janine about Heart Eyes, leaving her to handle the threat while she runs. Meanwhile, Zeke hears the noise and heads outside, calling for Janine, but gets no response. Soon after, Heart Eyes appears and stabs Zeke with a machete, killing him instantly. Ally arrives at the interrogation room and sees Jay still trapped inside. He urges her to find Zeke and get the handcuff keys to free him. As Ally leaves, Heart Eyes enters and attacks Jay with his machete, swinging it at him multiple times, but Jay dodges each strike. Just as things seem hopeless, Ally returns with a gun and fires at Heart Eyes, forcing him to run away. She quickly frees Jay from his handcuffs. The two then leave the police station and drive to a drive-in theater where several couples are watching a movie. Heart Eyes is noticed by some people who think it's just a costume. However, he kills a random man in his way for no reason. Ally and Jay quickly hide inside a car where a couple is having fun in the backseat. They try to warn them about the danger, but the couple is too high to understand what's going on. Suddenly, Heart Eyes bursts open the back door and forces a large cross into the man's mouth. He then grabs the girl and impales her onto the same crossbar, killing her instantly. Chaos erupts in the theater, and Ally and Jay flee, with the killer hot on their heels. Heart Eyes kills anyone who gets in his way. Jay suggests they run, but Ally feels guilty, knowing they led the killer here. She proposes that they end the threat before he kills more people. The two grab the killer's attention, luring him to chase them. They then take weapons from the dead bodies and prepare to face Heart Eyes. The killer soon strikes with his machete, but Jay does his best to fight back. Unfortunately, Hard Eyes gains the upper hand and is about to finish him off, but Ally steps in and hits him over the head with a propane tank. The killer is wounded but still alive. Jay finally finishes him off by stabbing him with his own machete, causing Hard Eyes to collapse. Afterward, they remove the killer's mask, but neither of them recognizes his face. Authorities arrive soon after, and a cop informs them they'll become famous for finally killing Hard Eyes. Afterward, Jay invites Ally to his hotel room before his flight so they can finish their dinner date, but she's still traumatized by the events of the night and refuses. At that moment, they're approached by Janine, who seems interested in Jay. She offers to drive him home and he agrees. Some time later, Ally is in her apartment, reflecting on her moments with Jay. She receives a call from Monica, who is concerned about her. Ally explains what happened and admits that she ruined her chances with Jay. Monica advises her not to let such a good guy slip away and encourages her to go after him. This advice convinces Ally, so she rushes to the airport. She searches for Jay everywhere but can't find him. Just then, she receives a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end reveals that Jay is in his possession and gives her an address to a chapel. He threatens that if she calls the cops, Jay will die. She hears Jay screaming in the background, which sends a wave of panic through her. Shortly after, Ally arrives at the chapel, where she finds Jay, gagged with his hands and feet tied. Hard Eyes reveals he's still alive. As he takes off his mask, Ally is shocked to see it's David, the IT guy she met earlier. She asks who the killer they murdered at the drive-in was, and David reveals that it was someone named Eli. Ally then asks if they were a couple, and David explains that they were actually a throuple. In a shocking twist, Janine appears, and it is revealed that she is also one of the Hard Eyes and David's wife. It turns out Janine and David enjoy murdering couples in love as part of their twisted kink. They reveal they are the true Hard Eyes, with Eli merely being a fanboy obsessed with the persona. Janine explains that the Hard Eyes who invaded Ally's house was actually her, while the one who killed the driver was David. She also reveals that the wedding ring they found earlier belongs to her, with the initials JS standing for Janine Shaw. Ally, still in shock, questions why they are targeting her and Jay, especially since they aren't even a couple. Janine explains that they originally planned to kill another couple but changed their minds after witnessing Ally and Jay's passionate kiss. To prove Ally doesn't love Jay, Janine orders her to pick up a gun from a nearby table. She explains that there's only one bullet, and Ally must choose between killing herself or killing Jay. With a heavy heart, Ally picks up the gun and tearfully tells Jay that, despite her resistance, she ended up falling for him. Jay begs her not to shoot herself, but at the last second, Ally shoots Jay near the shoulder. The bullet, however, hits Janine's belly instead. Quickly grabbing Jay, Ally tries to flee, but they're pursued by a furious David, who starts shooting at them. He drags Jay away while Janine catches up with Ally and begins torturing her. David taunts Jay, claiming he will make him watch as Ally dies. But in a surprising twist, Jay secretly picks up an arrow from David's pocket and stabs him in the eye. As David screams in agony, he stumbles onto a table of candles, causing hot wax to spill over and burn him alive. This infuriates Janine, who punches Ally to the ground and prepares to finish her off. However, in a desperate move, Ally stabs Janine in the windpipe with her metal straw, causing serious injury. She then violently pushes Janine into a statue, and the statue's sword impales her through the neck. Janine hangs in pain before the sword finally decapitates her. Afterward, Ally checks on Jay to ensure he is okay. But just as the tension builds, Jay finally manages to end the terror of Hard Eyes, bringing the nightmare to a close. The scene then cuts to a year later, where Ally and Jay are now a couple. They celebrate their anniversary at the same drive-in theater where they were once chased by Hard Eyes. To Jay's surprise, Ally pulls out an engagement ring and unexpectedly proposes to him. Jay happily responds with a yes, and the movie ends on a hopeful note.